Thank you for tuning into the Hacking the Patriarchy podcast. I'm your fervent feminist host, Raven O'Neill, and I get the honors of sitting down with women experts from all walks of life to discuss the ideas, opportunities, and the strategies that women can take advantage of to get ahead in our patriarchal society. So, if one of your love languages is learning how to hack patriarchal systems and structures, I invite you to join us and help move the needle. I'm excited to welcome today's guest, Ryann Foelker. Ryann's been called a visionary, an innovator, a designer, a futurist, and a strategist. Regardless of title, she's a professional shaper of opportunities and a designer of strategies that create desired futures. Over her more than 20-year career, she has adapted her expertise in product design and business to new challenges, first as an entrepreneur, and then with the addition of foresight training as an innovation leader in the insurance industry. Ryann's creative approach to strategy has won recognition from organizations including Fast Company, Rise Professionals, the Global Foresight Advisory Council, and the Design Futures Initiative. Follow her on LinkedIn. Your future self will be glad you did. Let's give a warm welcome to Ryann. Welcome, Ryann. I'm excited to dive into the topic of the future of entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Raven. It's really lovely to be here.
This is probably one of the episodes I was most excited about when I was fleshing out the overall plan, because you came to me and we ended up having a conversation. And not only are you able to talk to the future of entrepreneurship, but you work in the future. And I would love to start out by having you tell me more about that.
Yeah, for sure. I work in the future, I always say, because I have audacious goals. I have used foresight to overcome setbacks, to create my own opportunities, and to help build a society that I think we should be striving towards. And I use foresight professionally to chase audacious business goals. As a design leader, I work at the intersection of strategy and innovation. And I create innovative products, services, and experiences that people want. And those things take time to design. They take time to develop, to test, and to bring to market. And using foresight really helps me carve out the time to do the work.
I'm sure we're going to dive into how to work in the future later. But let's dive into the topic at hand, which is around entrepreneurship. So, being that you have that foresight and that you work in that future, what do you see are the most significant trends shaping for the future of entrepreneurship? And how can women position themselves to take advantage of those trends?
I think one of the most significant trends is the sheer scale of entrepreneurship, both this year, last year, and of course, going into the future. Last year alone, 5.5 million Americans started a new business. That's a record number, but it's also just the beginning of the business creation movement. And it isn't all attributed, as you might imagine, to the allure of entrepreneurship. It's also just impacted by the fact that companies are downsizing. They're turning to technology advancements to increase efficiency. And also those same technological advancements are creating new opportunities and new markets. So we're going to see a swell of entrepreneurship on top of what has been happening already these last few years.
Ooh, I want to dive a little deeper because obviously you mentioned the tech and entrepreneurship, potential growth there. But where do you see it overall? I feel like brick and mortar, it's got its place, but you see some of these big box places closing, changing their strategy. So outside of tech, where might you see other growth sectors?
Well, I think it all is enabled by tech, but I don't think it's about tech at all. I mean, unless you work in technology. And then, of course, it is about tech. But most of us don't work in technology. So if we think about technology as an enabler, we think about the capabilities that it unlocks, then, we can use those to grow our own businesses. So really what it comes down to is value creation. all companies, large and small, startup and legacy, succeed or fail based on their ability to create and evolve value for their customers. And I believe our customers just need more value than ever before. It is hard. We are struggling. It's hard to live life. Their customers, our customers, you, me, them, her, him, we're struggling, and we deserve products and services and experiences that are designed to make our lives better.
Ooh, this brings up, and I'm not sure you have the answer here, but you mentioned that we are looking for more and there's that need. Do you feel like the time to success will shorten? You know, they say the average, I think 3 years. If you're not revenue generating in 3 years, or you're not cash flow positive in 3 years, that you're probably not going to maintain. With that, is that window going to close? If there's so much growth and the customer need is more, is it going to change the timeline, and is it going to make competition even more difficult?
Yes. 100% yes, in everything that you just said. I think the future of work, which is, it's silly because the future is now, but yes, now and going forward, right? The future of work it's faster, it's harsher, and really it's teeming with opportunity. So, with the bad comes the good. Every change has a positive and a negative associated with it. But what we see right now is just change. Okay,
I know that sometimes, or at least in the background in the conversations we've had, we've looked at how disadvantage can actually be a positive thing and how it can play a positive role. So I want to dive into how can the power in disadvantage help women entrepreneurs adapt and create alternate pathways to success in these rapidly changing landscapes?
Well, I believe that there is a certain power in disadvantage. It can really fine-tune your ability to adapt and create alternate pathways to success. If you aren't disadvantaged, your pathway to success is laid out and you just happily waltz down that path. But that's not a path that's available to a lot of us. And so we have to get creative, we have to get scrappy, we have to think outside the box, and we have to create our own pathways. And it really is the root of strategy. Strategy is not about control, it's about change. If you are in absolute control of your environment, you don't need a strategy. Like I said, you just waltz down that path. But most of us lack absolute control. But we are all capable of influencing the change that we desire.
Oh, I love that, because you got a little ahead of my next question, which is great. So let's dive in a little deeper into how women can use mindsets to influence those environments and to, again, deal with the strategy or implement the strategy.
Yeah. So I like to think about it in 5 steps. And of course, it's not a linear path. Like we just said, you're creating and adapting the path as you go. But if you keep these 5 things in mind, I really think it does help. And the first one is really about observing your reality and being very real with yourself about it, because your strategy is only going to be as strong as the data you put into it. And so you have to be real with yourself about where you are and where the society is. So for instance, I'm an autistic woman, and I have to accept both my struggles and my privilege to create strategy for me that have the best odds of success. I have both struggles and I have privilege. My disability is hidden, but of course, the bullies throughout my life have always found it without issue. I can't ignore my situation, but I have to find a way to use it to my advantage. So to go back, you observe your reality, and then you really take the time to imagine the future you want. And that's so powerful, Raven, because you can really think. And again, I would encourage you, if you're not imagining an audacious future, you need to, because you have to shoot big. You do. You have to land somewhere good. So you imagine the future you want. And if you think about the reality as A and the future as B, then you have to design a strategy to get from A to B. After that, it's about adapting your actions along the way and actively, proactively creating the future that you deserve.
So you mentioned those are the steps and that existing in the future and putting up the big goals and doing the things. It does seem a lot about mindset there. You mentioned being an autistic woman, you have some disadvantages, but you also have privilege. And I would say that in today's world, even if you maybe don't have a diagnosed disadvantage, there's probably, unless you're privileged, like super privileged, you probably have some kind of disadvantage. And so outside of mindset, actual things you can do to just kind of get the ball going.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I talk about my steps, observe your reality, imagine the future you want, design a strategy to get there, adapt your actions, create the future you deserve. They really, really start with observing your reality. And we talked about observing it from your point of view, how I observe it from my point of view, how someone else might observe from their point of view. But I think it's about both your observing yourself and observing your environment. And so, foresight comes with a lot of research. It comes after a lot of research. It comes after maybe ongoing research. I don't even call it research when I do it. It's just staying current with current events and current thoughts and looking for signals that you think are going to impact the future that you want to create. So when I look around at what's happening, I think about, what I'm hearing. And if you bucket those into trends, great, those are already happening. But it's more about taking the trends that are happening today, thinking about the future that you're trying to achieve, and then figuring out how is this going to impact that future. And that's the foresight, really. When you're thinking, okay, this is what I think is going to change what's needed to create the future I want. And so does that change the approach I take to get there?
What really came together there for me was the mindset with the actual science. That felt very scientific and a process. You did mention something I want to dive into a little more again. You say strategy. And I don't know why, but the several times you've said it, I know what a strategy is. I am a business strategist. That's what I do for a living. I know how I take on strategy. But I do get a lot of clients that are also like, I don't even know where to begin. Where do you begin with a strategy? What does a strategy look like? Some people want exactly how you outline it, A, B, C, D. Some people are like, no, I don't mind whiteboarding it and then figuring it out from there. There's a million different ways. But I feel like some people get stuck in analysis paralysis around strategy. Do you have any recommendations on when you get to the point of building out your strategy, how to take those first steps?
For sure. Because it really is about change. If you just think about in terms of here's where I am, here's where the world is, here's what I want for my future, here's what I want for the world, how might I make that happen? It's just about change. You don't have to think about it as a strategy. You just think, how do I create change? And there are big ways and there are small ways. And really, it's combining the two, right? Just getting there by any means necessary.
Thank you for that. I am going to pivot a little and we're going to see where it goes and see if you have any insights here. But the topic is hacking the patriarchy. And we are talking about working in the future, which is so funny. I had never even really thought about the processes I do is working in the future or that I'm existing in that space. Do you feel in your professional experience for others working in the future, do men and women work differently in the future?
From my perspective, yes. But I'll caveat that. I think I think this is tricky. I think privileged men approach the future differently than women and disadvantaged men.
Okay.
I think it isn't as binary as male, female. It's really about, is your path obvious or non-obvious?
Ooh.
And if your path is obvious, then I do think you approach the future differently because you assume that it will be the same, that your path will continue to be obvious.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
For those less privileged and don't think that way. Well, first of all, do they know? Oh my gosh, I just went to the whole, do they consciously and subconsciously know that their path is different and therefore their strategy and the whole process and everything is different or not? And if, I don't even know where I was going to go with that because I just had this moment of,
I think I know where you're going. Let me try. I think if you have a non-obvious path, you have two choices. You can get creative and try to build your own path, or you can be defeated. And I think that there is option C, which is both, which is, I think, where many of us live. Certainly I live there. Sometimes I get defeated, but then I wake up the next day and I think, okay, what am I going to do creatively? How am I going to find a new path? The one I was on isn't working anymore, or I hit a roadblock, or it's just not going to get me where I want to go. How do I pivot? You can work and you can be defeated and creative. They can coexist.
Oh, I love that. And you did take what I was trying to throw out and took it. So I really appreciate you having the pickup there. You mentioned creativity in that last answer. And I know that you think of creativity as super important and you have a certain perspective or your own perspective on that. Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's paramount. There's this study from Harvard University that says that 85% of our success comes from soft skills. I don't know how they got that. I don't know where that came from. I'm not vouching for it. But I would say that every so-called soft skill is an input or an output of the creative process. And I think that this is why creativity and the arts and learning the creative process are so important because, companies that create value for their customer and their customers' futures will profit where others stagnate and cease to be. And so for entrepreneurs, this is incredibly important. And I would say for entrepreneurs as well. But business success now and going forward has become a design challenge. And I really want to help people rise to meet it. So I'm doing a lot on social media to try to help entrepreneurs learn how to create these products and services and experiences that their customers want, because I think it comes down to creativity at this point.
Ooh, and when you help them, I would love to know more about how you approach that without giving it all away, because that's part of what you do. And I want those tuning in to reach out and learn more. But it's weird because creativity is different for everyone, right? It's nuanced in general. And then on top of that, what level of creative you are, where you are creative, but within that, how you get started in supporting on the creative side.
Well, I think it's an effect of the change that we were talking about earlier. Change it's just happening at faster rates. And it's not going to slow down. That's where we are. That's where we're going to be. But I think that means that the era of copying other people's business plans and just hoping to get a different segment of the market. Those days are gone. You have to be creative as an entrepreneur or as any type of business owner these days. You just have to, because if your strategy is to fast follow, it's just not going to last that long, because the speed is going to have to get exponentially faster. And then really, what are you doing? Like at some point, you just can't do that anymore. You can't maintain that speed. So I think figuring out where is something new, what is something new that I can give customers that they don't have right now, it's critical to any business success.
Oh, you touched on something I love, because you work in the future. And I think this is a topic I've seen debated a million times online too. You talked about picking up and following someone else. Just isn't going to work. What about social media? I have heard that some of the best businesses you can go into now are ones that were mom and pop that are being sold because generations currently don't want to take over the family business. They want to go do their own things. I guess a good majority of them express interest in something in social media. And I feel things are changing. And if your goal is to be a media influencer, have you missed the mark now with where the future is going?
My personal opinion is that because the world of work is changing, people have to learn how to monetize their knowledge. So I don't think social media influencing is going away. I think it's becoming more of an expertise, and I think it's harder to break into. And I think if you're doing it, you do have to figure out what is your niche and why would people listen to you. I also think you have to be really mindful about the fact that you're kind of going into teaching, which, to be totally frank, I have zero interest in. I have a lot of interest in a world where we have better products, services, and experiences that do more things for me and take some of my struggles away. I have an enormous interest in that. And so for me, social media has been sort of a means to an end. Do I want to be a teacher? Nope. But do I want more people to understand how to do this so that society gets the help that it needs? Yep, I do. So I think you have to know why you're going into whatever business you're going into. And you need to figure out a very specific way to carve out your own market share.
What I love about your answer is it kind of touched on everything, right? You have to have a strategy. I feel like everyone hates social media. And that answer was very much like, I hate it and I love it. And it has a use. Is that the use I'm seeing and I want to be a part of? I really appreciate that answer. Thank you for that. I want to circle back to tech because we did talk about the future of entrepreneurship. And of course, it bled into the conversation of tech. And I want to look at where you might see tech going and how you might specifically advise women to use that to their advantage.
I'm so glad we came back to this because this is a huge part of the conversation. And, my belief is that we talked a lot about how, I think value creation is key. I also think you have to think about tech in terms of the capabilities it creates. I can't say that enough to people. This is just, it's critical. I always use this example, but I'm going to continue to use it forever because I think it's great. If you have a drill and you're asking me, hey, Ryan, how do I sell this drill? How do I get this drill into the hands of more people who, I might think, okay, well, I know contractors use drills and I know, whatever. And I might give you a list of the market that you could go after. But if you say to me, hey, Ryan, I've got this great way to make fast, cheap holes, as many as you want, wherever you want, and, unlimited supplies of sawdust, What could I do with that? Well, then, Raven, I could create a much more interesting strategy for what I could do with that in the market. How could I help customers with that? What type of market could I carve out with that? So I think tech has to be the same thing. You have to stop thinking about what can I do with AI and start thinking, what can I do with scalable translation and scalable transcription and scalable automation and, all of the things that we now have access to that we didn't before. And that's just one technology and one part of one technology. So if you start thinking about the world of technological advancement in terms of the capabilities that they are unlocking, then you can think about how you can use that in your business and how you can bring value to your customer.
Oh, that was so insightful. And I'm glad you used the AI as it is still the topic du jour for so many. So
it should be. Frankly, it's amazing. And maybe it's not yet, right? But it's getting exponentially more amazing. This is part of the amazing future in front of entrepreneurs. This is the opportunity. The fact that we have capabilities that we could only dream of before. And right now, they're not really being used to add value to society. They aren't at all, full stop. So we need entrepreneurs to think creatively. How do we use these capabilities to bring value to people who are struggling today?
And that is where we want to go. And it's the hot topic. Everybody wants to do big, bold things with it, but it will come back to how do we use it to better the world. Coming back to community and entrepreneurship, how can the entrepreneurial community better support women, particularly in terms to access to resources, mentorship, and network opportunities? And I know we talked about this briefly beforehand, and I just had to throw it out there because I think your answer is brilliant.
I don't really have an answer for you other than to just be completely different.
Yeah. That's why I had to throw it out there because it was the best answer. It really is. And when you say being completely different, like truly being completely different is part of being your authentic self, right?
Yes. And I'll tell you, I've built really the purpose of my career is kind of around the idea, would we design the things that we're interacting with today? Like, would I design this healthcare system that we're in? Oh. Would I design this education system that we're in? How about this political system? Would I have designed any of these for today's society? No, I would not have. And I think, it comes down to any system. Would I design an entrepreneurial community in the way that it is acting right now? Hell no, I would not. It is not equitable. And in my opinion, it should be completely redesigned. Should be and will be are two different things, but that's where I sit.
Oh my goodness. Your examples are perfect. The education system and the healthcare system are just spot on. I made a doctor's appointment recently. It took me 4 hours to get that done between the insurance company sending me to the wrong doctors and the doctors being like, no, it was 4 hours. I was like, this is the most broken thing ever. So thank you for our listeners tuning in. When you're approaching doing things differently, and again, creating that strategy, approach it with questions such as, if I were to do that for today's world, would I do it that way? I love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it helps you, when we were talking earlier about how you can get discouraged sometimes. Absolutely. I get discouraged all the time. And then I get up and I live to fight another day. But I think that question also helps you in those discouraging moments because, I've had people tell me all sorts of different ridiculous things along the way, like, oh, we don't need to redesign that. It's great. And, there doesn't need to be any innovation here because it's perfect. No, no, it's not. You just ask yourself that question and then you think, oh no, there's a lot of room for improvement. My work here is valid.
Yeah. And that's part of that thing too. Are you working in the future? If you're working in the future, things are definitely changing.
Yeah.
You should be evolving and your business should be evolving and you should be asking the questions that matter for the future. So you gave us so many nuggets. You gave us your list. Then you gave us that question that I think is so imperative. I love to end the show with, it's hacking the patriarchy. Do you have top 3 hacks you would offer women in entrepreneurship when looking to the future of entrepreneurship?
Yes. Let's start with that one that I talked about just now, that, you have to think about, is this really the best that this system or this product or this service can be? Usually the answer is no. And then you know that you're on the right track. Then I would say, think about the future as not firm. It is not firm. It is not anything. It is an idea. And there are infinite possibilities of what could happen in that future. So even if you think, oh, this is the way it's going, that doesn't mean that's what's going to be. It just maybe means that that's where we're headed right now. So there's a lot of opportunity to change. You can be that change. Absolutely. Third is be introspective, but also cognizant of your environment. We don't exist alone. You're important and your environment's important too.
Oh, I love it. For those tuning in, where can they find you? Where can they connect? I'm going to put it in the show notes, but where can they reach you?
Awesome. So right now I am on LinkedIn. I have a website as well, but I would recommend going to LinkedIn. I'm toying with the idea of starting a TikTok. So any thoughts, pros or cons on TikTok, I'm interested in.
Well, hopefully someone can reach out and chime in there because I have no insights. I started an account with the intent of doing something with it and it's not happening.
Sounds good.
It's overwhelming.
I'm certain.
So, got a cat there. We'll leave that in so that there's some real life on the recording. We got a cat in the way.
Perfect.
They're going to reach out to you on LinkedIn. I'm going to put those in the show notes. I cannot thank you enough for joining me for this conversation today. It is closing out the season, and it is exciting to close out a season with the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It has been an absolute pleasure and a treat to talk about this because, screw the patriarchy.
Agreed. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to today's episode. For all the juicy deets on this episode, be sure to check out our show notes or give us a holler on Instagram at Hacking the Patriarchy Podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support this podcast, don't be shy. Please share it with your friends. Sharing is caring after all. Lastly, if you'd like to lend your personal support, please take a moment to tell the world about it with a review on your favorite streaming platform. We'd be forever grateful. Tune in again soon to enjoy a brand new episode of the Hacking the Patriarchy podcast. And until next time, keep on hacking, my friends. If you've made it this far, I have one more little thing to share with you. Did you know that this isn't my only feminist endeavor? That's right, there's more. I run a media startup dedicated to providing the most current and pertinent news about women, for women, and by women. Our mission centers on delivering a platform where the latest updates regarding women-led initiatives are extensively covered, highlighting women's actions, accomplishments, perspectives, and other elements that profoundly influence women's lives and contribute to meaningful progress. I invite you to head over to femled.news to learn more.